Alright everyone, so with Superman officially released, we have so many live action Superman movies, especially from Christopher Reeve to Henry Cavill and now to David Corenswet and so much more, and with all these great actors that have portrayed this iconic figure. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking all 7 live action Superman movies from worst to best, and especially for what this superhero has come towards, especially with the movies and how we can connect with them. And these are my opinion, but let's get right down to business as well. And so, if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so I'm on 80 future vids. But now, let's hop into this ranking. Coming in last place at number 7 is Superman 4 Quest for Peace. And now, I want to say up front, this is the worst Superman movie I've ever seen. Not only is it short with that 90-minute runtime, but it was the last movie in Christopher Reeve's run at playing Superman. But just with everything that goes on, especially from the nonsense to like the rush plot to all the CGI being combined, and even though it just wraps up this good run, and even with the Superman that has to take on Ultraman, especially with everything that's involved around him, it's just like complete utter nonsense that I would not look back on. But I think people will look at it in like a different light. But at least we get to see this one last scene of Christopher Reeve as the character of Superman flying off, and trust me, his legacy will live on as the iconic figure himself. But just with everything that goes on, especially like this, I'd like not like a Superman movie at all. It's not like very impactful, and that's why I admit that with Superman 4 is probably undoubtedly like the worst superhero movie of all time, and with the way that people look at this film. At number 6 is Superman Returns. And now, this is a continuation of the classic movies where you have a new actor portraying Superman. And now, this did come out at a time where Christopher Reeve passed away and a new actor stepped in to play the character played by Brandon Routh, with the premise of his return into the world after 5 years, that everyone has moved on without him, that they don't need a hero like Superman. But especially with the Superman that has to reconnect with Lois Lane, and that he has a son, and with the James Marsden that plays her fiance, and with Lex Luthor played by Kevin Spacey, and his full rise to power to fully take on Superman. I mean, it is really good, especially with Bryan Singer. If you know, the director of the X-Men movies, like took a shot with his take on Superman. But there are so many problems that go down with this movie. But it has a great score and all that, but especially with the plane sequence, and it has these good sequences there and there, but the movie is just like unnecessarily long. It kind of like it drags itself to the point where I'm basically bored with this movie. It definitely explains all that, but it's especially with Bryan Singer for what he had to do in order to make this movie right. It's especially when you have a new actor portraying Superman, but there's just a lot of problems with this movie, and I have a feeling that if we would have achieved off like I'd say 10 to 20 minutes of the movie, it would have been a perfect 2-hour, 10-minute movie to begin with. But there's like so many unnecessary plot elements of the storyline that go along with it. But I just like, man, yeah, it doesn't even have that Richard Donner tone. But yeah, it really has problems. At number 5 is Superman 3. And now, I think that this is probably like not like a good movie, but it did have some good sequences there and there. But with the way that this movie is structured, it is basically doing like a comedic bits all the way up to the very end, especially when you have Gorman that is trying to help the villain named Webster to create a weather satellite to locate a kryptonite, which is Superman's weakness. All the stuff that goes down, especially when you have like hilarious moments there and there, but when you add the John Williams score, and of course I love Christopher Reeve's performance as Superman, but there's just so much stuff that goes down in this movie that's like utterly bad. The remaining movies that were in Christopher Reeve's run as Superman, it doesn't even have the Richard Donner magic that we are missing, especially from the original movie. And even with Clark that's trying to reconnect with his high school sweetheart, and we get the absence of Lois Lane, and just like so many pros and cons that are definitely listed here. But especially when you have a Superman going through an identity crisis and battling like two versions of himself, it's just like it's just not a good movie, and it's basically a comedy throughout the second half. Even though I like the third act finale, but it's just many things that are definitely wrong with this movie. But hey, I appreciate Christopher Reeve's time for what he had to put into the character, but the story is not good or better for worse. At number 4 is Man of Steel, and this introduced us Henry Cavill as Superman. And even though I do love what Henry Cavill put into the role, I thought he was greatly casted as the character, but especially when you add Zack Snyder to the picture, and with the way of his technique of the world of Superman as we know it, there's just like many mediocre and just like not so good stuff that goes down. And even though we have the Superman movie that feels dark, but I just don't think it was done right. But even from the Hans Zimmer score to the amazing sequence with Superman taking his first test flight, it felt so impactful, especially with the way that people represent and become attached to this character. With Zack Snyder's direction for where he wanted to take Superman, especially with the DCEU, and it's just like not a great movie. But Henry Cavill, I mean, bravo to him for putting on a fantastic performance, especially with General Zod as the villain, and with the way of his origin story, it felt such an impactful light. But it is a good watch, but just like not a great story. But I think the Man of Steel was not done right. He's everyone's favorite Superman, especially me. But I just do think that they head into the wrong direction. But it is a very good watch. At number 3 is Superman 2, and this is the follow-up sequel to Superman from '78. And this is where you have 3 supervillains that are controlled by Lex Luthor that escape from Krypton, and you get Clark and Lois spending time with each other. And now I did like its good elements, because we really got to explore more of Superman's role, especially for what connection that he has to Lois Lane, and for where like you get Lois becoming curious about Superman. And I did like its good story elements, learning for who he truly is, and that is such a great storytelling. And wow, just with the final ads for where Superman takes on the 3 villains, and I definitely liked Lex Luthor. I thought he was a very menacing villain, and with Clark and Lois definitely getting their moment. And on top of the only gripe that I have, that even though with each element it doesn't hit the same a little bit, but it does have some good Donner elements in there. But even with the Richard Donner cut of the film is far better, but when you do a sequel, but it is a good watch and a great continuation of the character. Coming in number 2 is Superman. This is the new movie that is out right now with David Corenswet portraying the character. And this was not only the new movie to kick off the brand new DC universe from James Gunn, but it is such a beautiful movie. It perfectly represents the symbol of hope, and I think this is the best Superman story ever portrayed on screen. And David Corenswet perfectly embodies the role for what this character has to go through. And I think for what James Gunn's take on the character is that, especially with like finding hope and learning for what it means to be human, especially about making mistakes. And Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, was menacing for what he does to Superman, especially with his plan to take over Metropolis, especially when you have the Bravia plotline involved for how Superman sees this as like an act of war. And just with the overall structure for how James Gunn really wants to center this, how he wants to welcome us into this world that he has established. And by the end of the movie, it felt a pure joy. But just to watch this version of Superman take on very powerful stuff, I mean, of course, it leaves us with such a beautiful, heartfelt message for what it means to become a better person. But that's what this new Superman accomplishes. And with each character, they all get their chance to shine. Especially as I love Clark and Lois, especially played by Rachel Brosnahan. Like, they nailed their chemistry, and with every single side supporting character definitely nailed their roles. It is beautiful storytelling from the action to the great action sequences, and James Gunn nails it down to bottom. And I can't wait to see more of the new DCU universe that James Gunn has created, especially if we could get to see more of David Corenswet portraying the role as the Man of Steel, many more in this universe. So I'm ready for it. But I think Superman, I think it has become my favorite movie of the year so far, and I think it's also a great superhero movie. But coming at number 1 is Superman from 1978, and now this film changed the game for the comic book genre forever, and its impact and its influence, especially with Richard Donner and his technique and his take on Superman, and the way that we are introduced to Christopher Reeve as the Man of Steel, as it is telling a story of a metahuman Kryptonian baby that is sent from Krypton to Earth to be raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent, with the way that they establish his origin story. And it is done perfectly with every supporting side character, and with Clark and Lois Lane, and everything that is being introduced for what Superman is made of, especially with its powerful impact for what it means to be a hero and to take on Lex Luthor. And we cannot forget the John Williams score. It definitely gives chills every single time I listen to it, especially with that score alone. It definitely makes what the impact of the storytelling of Superman is really all about, especially with the movie's impact on other people. And I think this movie is definitely it. I think it is like the greatest superhero movie of all time. And so there you have it. This is my ranking of all the Superman movies, and especially with each actor that has portrayed the Man of Steel, and especially with our current Superman, David Corenswet. And I think he's definitely going to nail the character for the rest of time, especially for what James Gunn has cooked up with his new DC universe. But I think with Christopher Reeve that kicked off the live action movies, and to be that impactful storytelling about Superman for what he is capable of, to fighting off villains. But I think where Superman and all the live action movies has come up to this point, and I think it's very, very good, even with some hits and misses. But hey, there's always a Superman story to be had, and yeah, I had fun with this as well. But that's gonna do it for this video. Just let me know in the comments down below, and what is your ranking of all the Superman movies, all the live action movies from worst to best? Just let me know it all in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe and turn notifications about future videos, and also follow all my social media. It's all linked down below. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.